Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Vroom, vroom, indeed.
Vroom.
They should have called this vroom.
They could have called it vroom.
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Rush.
Roosh.
Today's Tom Sawyer. He gets high on you.
Mm-hmm.
And the space he invades, he gets by on you.
Yep.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. You know.
Yeah.
It's like the band.
Yeah. All this machinery making modern music.
Yeah.
Still be open-hearted, Dave. Not so foolish at it, it's really just a question of your honesty. Yeah, your honesty.
Welcome to the racing grudge match of the decade.
World champion Niki Lauda trapped in a searing inferno of 800 plus degrees.
Listen. big thank you. Big old thank you to our patron, Mercurial Oz.
Thank you.
Without you, we wouldn't be thinking about Rush the band and watching Rush the movie.
Let's walk that one
point.
back.
That's
I
a
am
good point.
frequently thinking about Rush the band.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about Rush a little bit.
They're always there in the back of my mind, you know, like a warm hug.
Yeah. This is a 2013 biography picture, if you will. Directed by Ronald Howard.
Yeah, Ronald Howard.
Yeah, this has Daniel Bruhl and Christopher Hemsworth as not NASCAR, Formula
It's a
races.
Hemsworth of Chris.
Yeah. It's also got fucking, what has it got? Natalie Dormer, fucking Olivia Wilde in there.
Yeah, kind of in and out, but...
in and out, for sure. Natalie Dormer is like... barely in it.
Yeah,
I don't think she was famous.
She's really barely in it. Yeah. I sort of had forgotten that because I assumed when it started, I was like, oh, okay, so she'll be the love. Nope, we'll never see her again. Okay.
No, yeah, she's just the lay at the beginning.
Oh man,
I had not seen this movie before.
Neither had I, but I was familiar with the story. Well, I was familiar with Niki Lauda. I didn't really know much about James Hunt.
I was not, and like, I'm not a biopic person that much, and I'm not a racing person. So that's all to say that this had two things that were
just not in your wheelhouse. No pun intended.
Yeah. How'd you like this movie?
I just thought it was really good.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad. What I'll say is that much like racing, I was bored until a crash happened.
Sure.
That's all to say. This is such a good movie that it won me over ultimately.
Yeah, I really, really like the way it was directed, like the way it was told,
yes.
the way it was shot was really cool.
Yeah, and written the way
it's told. Yeah, the way it goes back. It basically goes back and forth between the two of them. It's about their rivalry. So you'll spend like 20 minutes from the point of view of one guy, and then it'll shift over, and you'll spend 20 minutes in the head of the other person from their point of view. And it's just such a cool way to do this rivalry because you end up seeing kind of what their respective blind spots are, and you kind of get to see like, oh, okay, they're basically the same person, at least in terms of how they compete. It was a really cool way to do it.
It's Peter Morgan who wrote The Last King of Scotland, Frost Nixon, and the Queen.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Bohemian Rhapsody as well. He basically, that's all he does is biopics. That's his
the
game.
The screenplay was really good.
Yeah. And this does, like, you kind of know from the start because it's showing, like you said, both people, and it's not establishing like this is a good guy, this is a bad guy.
It doesn't make a judgment call on either one. Like you see, it shows both men's faults are very plainly. I mean, they're simplified. I'm sure
strengths.
the real men are much more complicated. But yes, and their strengths, what they're good at, and what their blind spots are, what their faults are.
Yeah. So what dragged for me is basically it starts alluding to this crash that I had no idea. Like, I had looked it up, so I knew from there. But that this guy, this Formula One racer, got half of his fucking face burnt in this horrible crash in this rivalry with Chris Hemsworth. And they allude to it at the beginning, and then they have to like catch up to it at the halfway point. And this movie had a lot of challenges. One being that it's two guys, and like clearly they wanted to not make anybody the bad guy. And then also, like, we'll get to it, but it's very anticlimactic. Like, the races themselves sort of end, like, for sports movies, it ends fairly anticlimactic. It doesn't end with these two people like, ooh, who's gonna win? Like, it's one of them just stops. One of them just goes, all right, I'm not doing this anymore. And then the other one wins in this really, like, fairly abstract way.
Yeah.
That, like, me not being a race car person, you're
not. Yeah, you're a human person of bones and blood, not a race car person like Turbo Kid.
All right, so you might not be able to answer this for me, Tom. Who gets to choose who starts at the front?
You compete for pole position. I can't get much more into it than that, but it is determined. It doesn't seem fair. It is fair. It's more than a coin flip. I think it's determined by your qualifying times.
Okay, and I guess
I'm talking out of my ass. Like this is like second or third hand information. I've seen like 3 races in my entire life.
Yeah, I guess since it's not like horse racing, they all come out at the same point. Like, I guess since there's so many laps, anybody has a chance to catch up. Is
right, and it's you race. It's a whole season, so like you can win one race, but it also depends on how well your team is doing, and also how well you're doing overall. That's why Nicky keeps telling James, like, he'll win one race and he'll be like, yeah, let's see what happens in the next race. He's like, yeah, you can beat, like, at the beginning when they're racing in Formula 3, which is like the minor leagues, and he wins. He's like, sure, yeah, like, you'll win today, but let's see if you can keep it up for 6 races. Like, how's that? Are you going to be able to beat me consistently every day? Or so it's know, it's a points game basically, and that's how James Hunt eventually wins in the end.
Yeah, and they very clearly show that one of them is like, he's the long game guy. He's the Sherlock Holmes of cars. Like, his ass can feel it when cars are bad. And like he's a mechanic guy, and the other guy is like guts, instincts.
He's
like,
Evel Knievel, basically.
Yeah. So he's just going for it. So it's the idea of like slow and steady versus, not slow and steady at all. And so like there's like a clear like a clear like character contrast there that makes it interesting.
Their approach to it is entirely different, and it's the same as their approach to life. That's just also a big part of the movie. But like the passion is the same, which is I thought was interesting. They don't. It's surprisingly not like heavy-handed for a Ron Howard movie. Like I kept forgetting it was him. I mean, there's melodrama obviously, but like, I was surprised at how subtle some of it was. This, like the stuff that I'm talking about right now. It's not shellacked in there. It's kind of subtle.
Right. So the things that got me in the first, like, bored me in the first half. I guess I'll explain like why this movie at first was losing me, and then it got me by the end. But it felt like, I don't like biopics. Again, racing, I was just like, they're just driving in circles. I don't know, man. And what it felt like to me is that I had to get double the biopic cliches, like meeting the wife, the getting married. Like, that to me felt like there was the one guy who's like, let's get married today. And I feel like I've seen that and a few biopics of like, we just met, let's get married, we're instantly in love shit. And then there's the like, our marriage is like an arranged marriage with a socialite biopic feeling where it's like, like they meet at a party and she doesn't know who he is. Like those all felt like little cliches of biopics that I've seen, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then we got double that. And it was like, oh my God. And like the sponsor stuff and like, you know, I'm Sherlock Holmes with my ass, where it's like all the biopic stuff where they have to show like, look how special they are. But it's times two. And for the longest time, I was like, why do we even need to see their relationships? And honestly, in the end, it played out. Like there's a reason.
There is a reason.
Yeah. It's just a tricky fucking story to tell because you can't avoid it. Like that's, I think, what it ultimately is like.
Mm-hmm. And like, there's a reason those things are cliches, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm sure this is really how the real James Hunt approached his relationships, and it's probably true that he lost his wife to Richard fucking Burton.
Yeah.
Richard Burton, Dave.
Yeah, that'll happen.
I looked up some trivia about this movie. They were going to have Russell Crowe play Richard Burton in a cameo. That would have been incredible, Dave.
That would have been so good. That would have made me so happy. Oh, shit. Yeah, I mean, I guess for people who haven't seen it, yeah, there's these, they basically do this dual narration of these two drivers, and they're showing both of their lives. They have like kind of an early rivalry. They're both dicks. I like that they're not both good. It's more like they're both kind of dicks. They're both very prideful. They add these little touches, like, and I'm sure this is based off reality, but like Hemsworth talks this huge game, but for every race he vomits. And so it's this idea of like, oh, he's clearly terrified every single race.
Mm-hmm. And he's aggressive, and he'll make like dumb mistakes.
Yeah,
sometimes.
But people like him.
Right.
People like him.
He's a big party guy, and everybody loves him. And then Daniel Bruhl, Niki Lauda, is
he's
dick.
A rich kid.
He's like rigid. He's Spock-like. Like he's just very coldly logical and very German. He's very aloof.
Very, very German. Yeah.
And nobody likes him. And he thinks it doesn't matter. Oh man, there's just so many different things that he
buys his way into it, right?
He buys his way. So does Hemsworth, and that's like one of his blind spots, right? Because he throws it at him later. Hemsworth's like, "Oh, how was it like buying your way in there?" And it's like the scene right before this, we learn that that's exactly why Hemsworth is there. They had to buy his way in there too, and they're like, "Oh, why don't we just do this? This way we don't have to kiss anybody's ass."
Him and his buddy Bubbles Horsley.
Yep.
Which I was like, come on, life, come on. Nobody should be called Bubbles Horsley. It's so British. Is Hemsworth supposed to be British?
He is, yeah.
Just make him Australian.
Yeah, he might as well be. He's behaving pretty Australian in this movie.
Yeah, like the accent, you can tell they're like trying to tone it down a little, but I'm like,
But yeah, it's cool to see that they feel like real three-dimensional people. Like you're right, they don't it feels like they don't really jazz up like their strengths that much. Like they don't feel superhuman. Like Niki Lauda is obviously some kind of savant, but he doesn't feel like an impossible person, right? And
no, not at all.
James Hunt's like this, roguish, rough and tumble Indiana Jones type race car driver, but like we don't believe he doesn't exist. He seems very human. And then we also see like, it's like the movie's not afraid to make us like the guys in one scene and make us really not like them in the very next scene.
Yeah, they're kind of shits, you know?
they're shitty. Like Daniel Bruhl's a dick to people, and Chris Hemsworth cannot stop cheating on his wife, and he says some horrible shit to her in that one scene when they fight.
Which again, it's very biopic, which is like, I don't even know you anymore, and that shit where he's drinking and stuff. And then we have Daniel Bruhl literally when his marriage proposal is, it might as well be you.
Yep.
And so like they both suck at that shit. Mm-hmm. But it's part of, I think they lean towards Daniel Bruhl's character a little bit because obviously he has the more interesting thing happen to him. He also has the arc.
Yeah, he's
like
also
Hemsworth has a little bit of an arc.
Yeah.
He's also what?
He's the more clear arc. He's also kind of a heroic figure in Formula One. Like he's kind of like a towering figure in Formula One, and also he was still alive when the movie came
I was gonna say it almost felt mean because at the end he's just like, man, I'm still alive, so like that felt like the ending of like, well, he's fucking dead, so
really
we
I
can
thought,
tell his story
I
anyway.
know,
we
I
want.
thought those
no,
last
they were very respectful. It's just funny that it ends with like that addition. It was just
really that actually really struck me. That I thought that ending was
oh, the ending's great.
Where he says, when I learned that he died of a heart attack at age 45, I wasn't surprised. I was just sad.
Just sad. It was really touching.
Yeah.
It's just like, it just occurred to me of like this rivalry, like basically this one guy gets to tell the story, right? Because the real guy was the guy who, he heavily, he hung out with Daniel Bruhl. There was a lot of him working on it.
Yeah.
I just think it's funny. Like I'm imagining the other guy's ghost being like, that's not how it happened at all,
Right,
you
yeah.
dick.
Oh, they're making him look good here. I mean, they don't shy away from making it clear that he's an asshole and that he is not well liked.
It's just, it's basically, there's this, at first I was thinking like they both kind of swap places, but they don't really, because Hemsworth's character, he's like living for the moment, and ultimately he kind of burns out.
Yeah, he's living life. Life is, he's of the mind of life is for living. They almost have this verbatim conversation in their very last scene when they're in the hangar.
He never, after he wins, basically spoilers. He never goes back to racing.
Not really. He says he races kind of for like 2 more years, but not seriously, and then he just retires, and then he just becomes a celebrity, a presenter. He like a talk show host, and like I don't know much about James Hunt, and then he dies young because he partied. He was not here for a long time, just here for a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
And then to contrast is Niki Lauda's like. They meet in this hangar after Hunt's won, and he's getting on his party plane with his entourage of people and women and booze. And he sees Niki Lauda just kind of doing a check on his own plane by himself, which they do this a lot. They show the two of them in this context. I think every scene, they always show Hemsworth surrounded by his people that love him, and then Niki Lauda's always by himself.
Yeah,
like the little boy that nobody likes. So then they have this conversation where he's like, yeah, I'm going and partying. I was just at some wedding. I think it was a wedding. It might have been a birthday. Anyway, we're going to go over to like Italy. So how are you doing? Lauda's like, why aren't you getting back to work? Like, I'm already training for the next season. Like I'm doing flying because it's helping me train for driving. It's making me a better driver. He's basically talking about like how he started hitting the books the day after the season ended.
Yeah.
Like Hunt's like, you're not giving yourself any time to enjoy it. You just go, if all you're doing is winning and then get right back into the grind to try to win again next year is what's the point? And he doesn't have an answer for that.
Yeah, and like it's interesting because it's like to his own admission, like he never makes that arc. Because it's you expect like this guy living for the moment and this guy meticulously playing it out. They're going to learn something from each other,
and they do.
But it's much more subtle, and I think that's good. I mean, the symbolism of that moment: Chris Hemsworth getting on a plane, not really knowing what's happening, a passenger, and this guy meticulously making sure the plane he's going to be flying is safe, and he wants to pilot it. He wants to be in control.
And yet he's the one that had the horrible crash. Yeah, James Hunt didn't get injured in a crash like that.
Yes, which is that's a pretty like I don't know telling detail, which is that idea. It's a quote from Captain Picard. It's possible to do everything right and still lose, I believe is how he put it. Mm-hmm. Which is like sometimes it is what it is.
It's the Kobayashi Maru, Dave. It's the unwinnable situation.
Exactly. And so in this case, like, this idea that he's, it's just interesting because this guy is very meticulous, right? Mm-hmm. And he's even concerned for safety, right? There's the guilt comes in the day of the accident. He's like, it's raining. The roads are bad. I vote that we all it's
also
the race.
He has some really harsh things to say about the track too. Like He's like, he calls it like a barbaric, outdated, brutal track. He's like, you can't drive it. He's like, the only way you can drive it are in perfect conditions, and this is in perfect conditions, and it's like raining its ass off.
Apparently, he was like one of 3 crashes that day, because of this shit. And Hemsworth in this moment, which I looked it up, is I think it's true, basically pushed it and said like, oh, you're just in the lead. You don't want to race and so everybody votes, and Hemsworth pushes the vote to make them race.
He swings the room for him. And I like the way they did this scene, because even though the audience understands, and this is, you're right that the movie is more sympathetic to Lauda. So the movie understands, and it kind of knows that you understand that he's right. Like, this is dumb. Like, we're racing. We can't do this tomorrow. Like, why do we have to do this right now? It's so dangerous. And he's talking about how, like, he's very, I already said he's very Spock-like and also very German, but he's just like look, he's mathematical about the risk. He said, there's a 20% risk. I can handle that. Not every time I get in the car, there's a 20% risk I could die, but not 1% risk more. And this is like way more. And he also is like pointing out, look, I'm the only person here who has driven this course in 7 minutes. Like, I actually am pretty knowledgeable to talk about this, but he's doing it. He's like saying,
an asshole.
He's being an asshole. He's yelling at them. He's like trying to bully them and belittle them, and he's condescending to them about how right he is, because he's frustrated. Right. But it's like, he's a dick. He doesn't know how to. He thought he could get. He basically approached this up until this moment, and they don't call it out until this moment, which, again, like I was surprised how much subtlety there is that he clearly thought he could just carve his own path through racing, through Formula One, and not ever have to worry about making friends, because he just needed to rely on his talent and his ability.
Right.
And in this moment, he can't win the room over, even though he's clearly right. It's a stupid risk to take, because everybody likes James Hunt, because he's a cool, likable, charismatic dude who loves to pal around with the boys.
Yeah.
And he's really good.
Yeah, and he's good. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is getting him far. It reminds me, Brule he's like James Cameron. Like, he's a dick, but he's good at what he does.
Yeah.
Whereas
you cannot argue with the results. So it's like,
right. But if you're a dick, you better be good at what you do.
He's such a savage asshole to his teammate, Clay, the Italian guy, and he still brings him onto Ferrari with him. Like,
right.
That's because he's that good. He's like, wow, fuck, we got to have this weird genius who's driving for us.
Right. And so up until this point, we have this fairly heated rivalry, right?
Yeah.
Where like he's even dating like Chris Hemsworth's ex, which that dude gives him the heads up, like, he's a fuck god, watch out.
Right.
What a weird conversation to have.
It's that dude Clay, yeah. It's his teammate.
Who just like takes him aside, like, you should know that she's been fucked to heaven already.
The heaven and back by Chris Hemsworth. He's like the Godzilla of cock, man. Apparently, he just demolishes it and moves from city to city,
just fucking his way through the city,
just demolishing ass, like an atomic monster.
So, but they know what they're doing, and that's like, I don't know. They know that they're presenting 2 dicks that are both like very passionate, but like going back to like what Brule's like arc is, what he because so the way the final race ends, I guess I want to talk about or set that up, is that it's a very unstory-like thing to happen because it's real life, right?
Yeah.
Which is that he has this accident.
Which I think works for this movie.
Shit out of him.
Just really quick, I wanted to say I think that works for this movie. Anyway, continue.
Oh yeah, well, I think they made it work for this movie.
I was just saying, I think the anticlimactic nature of it is you can't say it's intentional because it's what happened, but I think they've recognized that it was anticlimactic and incorporated that idea into the film's themes. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, and I can imagine the writer sitting down and being like, fuck, okay, how do I make this work at first? And like, it probably took a little bit of digging, because what they do is they make the climax more of a character thing.
Yeah.
So like his character, he gets burnt to shit at the halfway point of this movie, and then we have this horrible recovery.
That boy, oof.
They're vacuuming
his fucking lungs out.
Yeah, where you're watching it and you're like, man, death would have been so much easier. Jesus Christ, like he is just suffering.
He inhaled. It's something you don't think about, but they're pointing out like the worst of his injury wasn't his face; it's the fact that he inhaled all of this toxic, incendiary fumes during the fire. So it's like burned the fuck out of his lungs.
And he's watching Chris Hemsworth just win race after race on the TV. It makes it even worse. For him. And so like they vacuum his lungs and then he's like, let's go again. And they're like, well, you don't have to. And they're like, let's go again. Like he's trying to fucking recover. Yeah. Even though it hurts.
He's trying to bang himself back into the race car.
And I don't know. I know this happened, but I don't know how quickly. The movie makes it seem quickly.
6 weeks.
Jesus fucking Christ. So yeah, he basically goes from the hospital to the racetrack. He just shows back up. And Hemsworth, to his credit, feels terrible. Like they have a scene where he tried to write him a letter and he couldn't. Like Hemsworth knows. And I thought this was going to be like, this is where I'm glad they like rejected. I mean, again, I'm sure this is just because it's what real life
probably
was.
What happened, yeah.
He just goes to him immediately and is like, I am so sorry. This was my fault.
When he comes back to the race. Yeah, he doesn't see him in the hospital or anything.
And so, like, after this, like, this is the sort of thing where normally you'd keep the rivalry going for the third act, and they sort of make up right after this. He basically just says, like, man, I'm so fucking sorry. That sucks. It was my fault. You know, I did this. I pushed the room, and and basically he says to him, like, yeah, he basically says, like, yeah, it was kind of your fault, but it was also, you were also the reason I'm here. Because I was watching you on TV and I wanted to win. So you're the reason I got back. And that's the ending conversation too. He basically is like, you're not stopping racing, are you? I need you. I need this rivalry is kind of what he says to him at the end too.
At the very end. Yeah. He says, you make me better. He's like, we make ourselves better. Yeah.
And then the reporter, and this is real, asks him an absolutely insane question.
I assumed it was real because it's such a fucking battle axe of a question. Like, why would you say that?
There's a couple maniacs. That guy asking for the autograph.
Yeah.
He's like, can you date it? Might be your last. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with
just,
you,
like,
man?
Stares at him and he can't even say anything to him. Yeah.
So this reporter asks, like, he says, what did your wife like think when she saw you?
When she saw
and he
your
like
face.
makes a joke. He makes a joke and to like he gives the reporter an out basically.
Right,
and then the reporter pushes the question.
Yeah, because it hits hard the first time. Like it hits like and he has to sit with it for a second, and he comes back with a self-deprecating joke. He gives the reporter an out. You're right.
Yeah, and then the reporter is like, "No, really though. How do you think your marriage won't survive this, will it?" And it's like, "What the fuck, man?
What kind of question is that?"
Yeah, and he just says, "Fuck you," leaves, and then Hemsworth takes the guy aside later and just beats the shit out of him.
Well, because they're buddies, and this is. It's twofold, right? Because obviously it's showing the shift in Chris Hemsworth, but like they're friends, like Hemsworth and this reporter. So they come aside, and he's like, "Oh yeah. Did you see I razzed him in there?" He thinks the rivalry's still going, and Lauda's so disliked that he's like, "Well, yeah, but let me fuck him, right? We can just make fun of his burned face and his,
right?
Like it's."
There's this implication, right, that like rivalry is one thing, but like, and this is probably a lot of sports, right? Which is like you can have a rivalry, but there's still this like reverence for the sport, and like people get fucking injured, and that's no joke. That goes beyond a rivalry.
If you saw the Netflix doc on the Malice in the Palace, they kind of. I forget which one of them says it, but they point out it's like what people don't understand is that. Most of us in the NBA, like we're all friends. Most of us, like we spend most of our time together. Team rivalry. Like there's rivalries and stuff get heated, but like most of the time, nobody wants to actually get into a fight on court or anything like that. Like
right, it's different for racing. If it's like your regular job, there's a movie called Fever Pitch, Tom. That I only saw once for the record, but there's a scene that I always remembered because it was a good idea is that I think James Fallon goes. There's a big Red Sox loss, and he goes to a restaurant and he sees like a couple of the Red Sox dudes just having a nice dinner and enjoying themselves, and it like hits him like they don't care that they lost, like, and that it's true. Like I assume if you're a professional player and you've been playing for like years and years and years, you're not going to freak out at every loss. You just can't. Like that's. Why would you? You know, like you can't survive that way. You just have to roll. Well,
certainly not in baseball. They play hundreds of games a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I mean, not hundreds, over 100, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, you're not going to like every loss. You're not going to have it hit you like a sledgehammer. You're going to go, oh fuck, all right. You know, that's just how jobs work. And so there's this idea. I think this, you know, they have a rivalry, but it's still like they're all doing it. I liked how. They never show an act. The movie treats a car accident like Jaws in this. Did you notice that?
Yeah, it treats it like a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah, but what I mean is that they don't show. They never show it really.
They really don't. Yeah, and they don't really. We see the aftermath. We see the aftermath. Yeah, and it's horrible.
Yep, and they did that on. You know, Ron Howard did that very much on purpose to make it feel way scarier. Because if he showed it in the first 15 minutes, it would deflate that, right?
Yeah. If we see a crash, it's always in the orbit, like it's always circling them, and there's so many. There's a great little shot. I mean, it's just, you know, it's a tiny little shot, and it's very simple, but it's when Chris Hemsworth is calling around begging for a job when he's trying to get picked back up into Formula One, and he's playing with his little race cars. And he's talking to him. He's like, well, they think you're a bit of a liability or something. He's like, what do they mean I'm a liability? And right as he says it, the car he's racing just flies off of the toy track. Real simple little thing, but, you know.
It was very cute.
I just thought this movie was like really well made in every aspect.
We haven't even talked about, so like this idea, so their marriages being the symbolism.
Yes.
And so like Hemsworth does the thing. He says, woman I've just met, let's get married. And then naturally that marriage goes very wrong. And then Brule, he has this calculated, almost loveless decision to get married to this woman with no passion.
Over a much longer timeline, too. He doesn't, they're together for a lot of the movie, but they don't actually get married until towards the end, or at least about half. Before his accident.
Yeah. And then once he's in the hospital, he sees the pain he's caused her. And so what happens at the very end, so they built up those two ideas, and then Hemsworth basically, they do kind of swap actually in a weird way.
A little bit.
Because what Hemsworth does is he does that race, and what Brule does is it's in Tokyo, it's really pouring. It's really intense. He won. He comes in fourth in the race before. This is the race after he gets burnt, and then this is the final for all the fucking marbles race. And he gets like 2 laps in, and he pulls over, and the pit crew is like, "What's wrong with the car?" And he's like, "Nothing. I'm done. It's too dangerous. I'm not doing this." And he's thinking about his wife, and so it's this idea of this like weird calculated marriage. He realizes in the moment like this isn't worth it, and like that is in line with his character, meaning that he's been very careful the whole movie,
but weighing risk, but
he's always wanted it. He's always been so hungry that kind of has been outweighing, because like if he really weighed the risks, he wouldn't do this at all.
It's just one of the lies he tells himself.
Yeah.
He weighs the risk, but like he set a 20% risk, a 20% chance he's going to die every time you get in the car. That's not an acceptable risk.
No, that's not. It's bad.
It's really bad.
So like ultimately, like he's always been a careful guy, so this is something he'd do. But the reason he does it, of just like, I don't want to put my wife through this.
Right? Yeah. Like, she like not 6 weeks ago he exploded.
Yeah.
And she had to watch him get his skin peeled off and get his lungs vacuumed out and then get right back into a fucking race car.
Right.
And and come in and place well enough that he's still in the lead. Like, he doesn't even need to race. That when he pulls over and is like, I'm done, he's still winning.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
So
so,
it's like doubly
he's still
pointless. You know?
Yeah, exactly. But it's an act of passion, right? It's an act of
he is
the kind of passion that Hemsworth would have normally done.
They're both, pun not intended, but they're both driven by the same thing. You know, they are compelled to do this. It's the thing they have to do.
Because I think that's the secret, right? Whenever someone is like, "Oh, I'm cold, calculated," they're always actually emotional, right? Vulcans, I would argue, are kind of emotional and pretend they aren't sometimes.
Yes, very much so. That's it comes up a few times.
Yes. And then TNG and Voyager, DS9, they have a bunch of stuff like that, where Vulcans are kind of the Ben Shapiro's of Star Trek, where they're like, "I'm logic," and it's like, no, you're not. You say you are, but you will do some illogical shit sometimes.
Oh, it's the Pon farr, man.
Yeah. This is off. In Star Trek Picard, there was one character that I really enjoyed, which was a Vulcan gangster, and he has to explain like the logic of being a criminal, and I thought that was really a neat idea.
That's a good idea, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Mirror Mirror Spock, where he's evil Spock,
Yeah.
but the logic of it is like, well, it's more logical for me to like help you guys escape.
Right. It's fun. But yeah, it's the same thing here, and him basically. And so this very anticlimactic act becomes climactic when they make it an internal character decision of everybody being like, "What are you doing?" And he's just like, "I'm done." And he looks at his wife, and that's the actual victory, right? Is like quitting is the victory. Meanwhile, Hemsworth comes in fourth and he wins by 1 point, which they make climactic enough, which is why they didn't want to make him just the foil, because it's like ultimately he wins and we want to feel a little happy for that.
Yeah, we do.
And then Hemsworth, I mean, one of the things we didn't mention in the ending, Brule like says to him like, had I not had my accident, I probably would have won. Doesn't that bother you? Like, doesn't it bother you that your victory was like kind of soiled?
Can be questioned, yeah, legitimately.
And Hemsworth, who is all pride, says like, no. His arc is he does the safe thing too. He never he
knows when to walk away from the table too.
Exactly. He was vomiting before each race. He was terrified. Yeah. And after winning once, he said, "All right, I'm done." And they're like, "It's not a clean win." And he's like, "I don't care. I did it as far as I have the trophy.
Yeah, I'm world champion. I won."
Yeah. And so they both do kind of learn from each other ultimately.
Yeah. At least,
and that is
cool.
In
some ways, yeah. And it's not heavy-handed. It's not a totality. Like, they don't become different people at the end. It's not like anything as dramatic as that. It's just very simple, and it felt very authentic.
Yeah, I mean, he says, I think Chris Hemsworth says to him, "You pushed me to risk my life." So it's like, it's not lost on him. Like, he can tell, like, this is toxic. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. You made me almost die.
Well, we see that's how the accident happens. That's something I wanted to call out too.
Right.
Is in that scene where they're getting ready to start the race where Brule crashes and is injured. They're both getting ready right next to each other in the pit, and Hemsworth crew is like, "Is he putting on the wet tires or not?" And the wet tires are like dangerous, apparently. He's like, "No, he's sticking with them." "All right, then I'm going to stick with him too." And then it cuts over to hit Brule's crew, and they're like, "What's he doing?" "Looks like he's sticking with the wet tires. You want to change?" "No, if he's sticking with them, I'm going to stick with him too."
Yeah.
So they basically played chicken with each other, and they're both. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, the idea is the wet tires, the track is drying out. So if you have the wet tires on a dry track, and so they both have to do a pit stop immediately.
Right, because they disintegrate. That's right.
And his stop, something happens with the car. I wonder if is that something you can know? That car gets fucking wrecked. How do you autopsy a crash afterwards?
There's a whole industry for that.
Yeah, I guess there is. Yeah, I guess they can figure that out.
They've gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's basically this really cool idea is this like, this, I thought the crash was going to be an ending thing. And then once I realized, halfway point, that's really cool,
Yeah.
So this halfway point where it's these two people kind of intersect and learn from each other after this pivotal they
It's drama, Dave. It's good shit.
Yeah. And then the ending is very touching because basically they've both been narrating, and then the this is a classic biopic idea, but the aftermath where, when a biopic says like, here's what happened after all this, they just use real footage of the actual people while he's saying what happened. And that was very good. That was a cool idea, know? It's very touching. And like, like this narration, at least because one of them is still alive when this movie was being made, is a very honest narration. It is clearly like the words of this actual person. That's at least
you would assume
probably put through a writer. But yeah. It sounded like, looking into this, it sounded like the real guy spent a lot of time with Brule, and like they became pals. Like I think they hang out and shit.
He's wearing false teeth. Did you notice that? It took me a while to notice that he was wearing fake teeth.
That's very funny. That's very weird. And yeah, I guess we didn't talk about the directing too much. I had one note. This is of its time because this is 2013. It's got like that color tint.
It
like
does.
The Matrix, where I'm like, come on.
It does,
2000,
but he's
2010s.
I appreciate that he employs it not that loudly. It's only during the driving scenes, or at least that's when I noticed it, when he's sort of like trying to represent them getting into the zone from their POV. And it kind of like the edges of it gets like, it's hard. I'm not sure how to describe it in non-technical terms, but like the frame gets kind of smaller, the edges get blurrier, and it starts getting that bright sort of washout, that color tints you're talking about. And you can, the noise of the engines goes away and you just see the road, and you're just kind of like moving with the camera, sort of just like moving with the road.
This is
a cool way to show it, I thought. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, this is a very good use of POV.
Yes.
Because I think biopics and POV go together really well when it's like, what was that movie with the one about going on the moon, directed by, I think, Whiplash.
Whiplash? First Man?
Yeah. Which, I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't. No, I wanted to.
So it's pretty good. And one of the really good uses of it is POV to show you, because we've seen a million times, right? People walk on the moon. And there's something incredible in that scene when he walks on the moon. They show his POV, and you realize, like, because they put down lights, and then it's just his shot, and you hear the breathing, he's trapped, and you just see darkness on the moon, because you like, they always light the moon really, where you see everything.
Yeah, where you can see for miles.
Yeah, and this, they do it like it's on the bottom of the ocean, and you realize how fucking terrifying that must have been to be walking on the moon. And I feel it was weird because it was like the first time a movie made me go like, oh yeah, that's terrifying. They do the same with the launch. The launch itself, you hear like the rattling, and it's all point of view of like this machinery that you're in that doesn't feel stable, that you're about to launch, and it was like, oh right, this is all extremely terrifying.
Right, you're just in a little metal tube strapped to a bomb. Yeah, basically.
And that's what you are in this as well. He literally says that.
Yeah,
and
so
he
like
does. The use of POV in this, when he's like racing, and you're like, man, he can't see shit. It's terrifying. When he gets in the accident, they do a POV when he's burning, of the people like trying to rescue him, and it's like horrifying.
My God, yeah.
To watch like these flames everywhere around you, it's a very good use of POV.
Ugh.
Very well directed.
Yeah, that scene is brutal. Yeah, man, it's the hillbilly elegy of it all. Like, Ron Howard has sort of become a parody of himself, but
yeah, I mean, what has he done lately besides
he
that?
did something else that was, I mean, he did those Da Vinci's codes. I enjoy the Da Vinci's codes. I guess there's nothing that really wrong with the directing.
He did, let's see. Oh God, I guess he did 13 Lives, which I didn't see. I need to see that actually. That looked good.
Yeah, that did look good.
Yeah, he's doing a bunch of things. He has a Jim Henson movie he completed, apparently. That's interesting.
Well, good for Ron Howard. No, maybe yeah. let me walk that back then. It's just that Ron Howard doesn't always pick the best projects, like
Hillbilly Elegy
was TV.
Yeah, Hillbilly Elegy wasn't great. He did In the Heart of the Sea, which was good for what it was.
I was disappointed by that one, actually.
See, this is from the era where like Ron Howard, you're right. Basically, he did Ed TV, and after that, there has been very few. I mean, Frost Nixon was good. The Da Vinci Code is fine. You know, it is what it is. But this movie got lost in it for me, where like he had started churning out these types of movies. I was like, meh. And so it was nice to watch this and go like, yeah, he can still direct. I mean, Solo, a Star Wars story, the problem isn't the directing, you know?
No. And that's not really the problem with Hillbilly Elegy either.
Yeah, exactly. He's always been a good director. So, I don't know. It's, yeah, it was nice to see this. I would have never seen it, you know, for all the reasons I said. I still think you could have shaved maybe 10 minutes off of it. Not much.
Maybe it's a pretty, it's not, I won't, it's right at 2 hours. I won't call it a tight 2 hours, but it's right at 2 hours. It feels like an appropriate length for a drama like this.
The second act, the first part of the second act, my eyes started glazing over. And again, I get what they were doing when it all ended. I was like, okay, yeah. I get it. It just doesn't hook you if you're not into this subject, I would say.
Right, and I had to keep reminding myself of that. Is Ron Howard is of a different generation, right? And this is a very, for somebody who was, you know, growing up or already an adult, or just to anybody who remembered, of the generation who remembers this rivalry. It was a very famous rivalry. It was a very famous crash. So it's like, you know, it's just, this is probably super well known to a lot of people, just not like you and me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There was probably like this movie did, like, I was looking it up. I think it had a budget of like 30 million and it did like 100 million. So people went and saw this.
Oh, I'm sure. It's just, it has a little bit going against this. I would say the title, Rush.
That's a terrible title.
I didn't know this was about a real thing, because Rush just sounds like a fucking like action.
I mean, in a vacuum, it's a fine title, but like,
yeah, I get why
it's such a generic title.
Now Rush Hour, see that's a title. That's a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, this it was a very good movie about something that I just didn't care about.
Right.
They're just driving in circles. They're not going anywhere. There's no point. It's weird. I have nothing else to say.
I'm done.
It was a good movie.
I got nothing else to say.
It was a good movie.
It was really good.
Yeah, Mercurial Oz, thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said, I wouldn't have seen this otherwise, so it was a good pick for that reason. Like,
yeah. No, this was a pleasant surprise. I didn't think it would be bad, but I didn't expect me to like it as much as I did. Like, I thought this was really good.
Same. Yeah, like I certainly didn't expect to like it in the first half hour too. Like I like paused it and like took a quick break because I was like,
that's gonna be one of these. All right.
But then it all went by really fast after that halfway point.
It all went by in a rush, you might say.
Yeah. So this was done through our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed, GAMEFULLY unemployed. We have exclusive podcasts on there, like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons, all sorts of stuff, including custom We Just Watched episodes, which is what we just did. So check that out.
Yeah, we also have a store. Head over to gamefullyunemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store. We have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your little, hopefully not currently on fire peepers onto that.
Yeah, fire bad.
All around his face.
Yeah.
Terrible POV.
Don't, stay away from fire.
Yeah, maybe don't drive Formula One.
Yeah.
If that were on the table, maybe reconsider.
You know what I would watch? You know what they should add? Jumps. Ooh, jumps, and what if
loops.
Loops. What if the cars dropped items that affected the other? Like, put a bunch of boxes on the road that the cars can hit and they get items and they can drop those items to like help.
Yeah, like a shell and like a banana.
Exactly.
I think we're on to something.
Hey, listen, our music is produced by Chris Corlew. You can find him on twitter.com as The Corlew, or go to shipwreckedsailor.bandcamp.com. gmail.com. Our channel artwork is produced by Michael Vincent Bramley. For more of his work, go to mvbramley.art. Our episode artwork is by Justin Brown, available on Twitter as Justin T. Brown or at artnessbyjustinbrown.com. And finally, additional artwork is by Starlene Hodge. You can find her work at starlenearts.com or on Twitter as StarleneX. Cool. Goodbye.